welcome Councillor Sean Percy, who was requested to observe today's meeting. So welcome, Sean. Can I all please remind you, as is normal, to switch your phones to silent for the duration of the meeting. And also, can I refer you to the protocols for remote meetings, which obviously we're aware of and which have been previously circulated. Namely, your microphones should be switched to mute unless you're speaking. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can you indicate either by the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via Teams. When I say for today's meeting, I'll assume that you've all read the paperwork prior to the meeting. And in respect of the chat function, can you please use it just to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electronic hand function or to raise any technical issues. And if you can, when asking a question, please can you refer to the page number. First item on the agenda is to do a roll call. I'm Councillor Mike Harvey, the chair, and I am present. I now call on Chloe from Democratic Services to take the roll call. Chloe, please.
Thanks, Chair. So Councillor Cypher Harman.
Present.
Councillor Sharon Freegard.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Nigel Hunt. Councillor Steve Hunt.
I'm here, Chloe.
Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Simon Noyle.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Alan Llewellyn.
Oh, yes, thanks, Chloe.
Councillor Sandra Miller.
Present.
Councillor Rydia Maisen.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Del Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Net Purcell.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Sheila Penry. Councillor Sonia Reynolds.
Present.
Councillor Arwyn Wilcock.
Present, Chair.
And then Cabinet members, Councillor Rob Jones.
Yes, here, Chloe.
Councillor Edward Latham.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Carol Clement Williams. No. Councillor Doreen Jones.
Present.
Councillor Alan Lockyer.
Present, Zoe.
Councillor Peter Rees. Councillor Peter Richards.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Annette Wingrave.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present, Chloe.
And then officers, Stephen Phillips.
Present.
Alan Devons.
Present.
Howell Jenkins.
Present.
Andrew Jarrett.
Present.
Nicola Pierce. No.
Apologies
Karen
from Nicola today.
Okay, thank you. Karen Jones. No. Craig Griffiths.
Present.
Hugh Jones. Mike Roberts.
Present.
Simon Brennan.
Present.
Kerry Morris. Dave Griffiths.
Present.
Joy Smith.
Present.
Andrew Thomas.
Present.
Paul Walker.
Present.
Joanne Hillier.
Present.
Jane Woodman Ralph.
Present.
Is there anyone I've missed?
Hi, Chloe. Reese George.
Oh, thanks, Reese. I think that's everyone, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Chloe. Okay, item 2 on the Cabinet Scrutiny Committee agenda is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Yes, Chair, I have raised my hand. I don't know if you could see it. Councillor Doreen Jones. I've been advised to. I don't know if you're going to scrutinise agenda item 5 on the document, are you?
No, we scrutinising 3, 4, 7 and 11.
Okay, then I'll leave that until the cabinet member then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Just looking. Councillor Alan Lockyer, please.
If you're not going to scrutinise the item, I have an interest in, that's why.
Okay, thanks. And I say I would have declared an interest in item 6, but we're not scrutinising that, so I don't have to declare it. Anybody else under declarations of interest, please?
Yes, Chair, I have a declaration on item 6, but we're not scrutinising it, so I'll do it in cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, I don't see any others. Then item 3 is pre-decision scrutiny. To select appropriate items from the cabinet agenda for pre-decision scrutiny. In respect of this and for the information officers and cabinet in pre-decision scrutiny, it was agreed that we would scrutinise, as I've already stated, items 3, 4, 7 and 11. So therefore we go to the cabinet papers, and item 3, Gnoll Estate Country Park Master Plan. Unless officers got anything to add, I think it's Simon Brennan and Mike Roberts. Then we'll go straight to the questions. First question, Councillor Stephen Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of the Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, I think it was important that I made a few comments on this item, as it would normally be part of our committee. It's the second time at Cabinet. I do appreciate that scrutiny has its role in these current difficult times, as you can imagine, going through Cabinet, and all members of that committee are more than welcome to attend this meeting and bring their own views and comments forward. Through Chloe, I did ask all members if they had any questions, either if they wanted to attend under the normal process or ask questions to me to forward to this committee today. There were no questions. So as am I, I'm sure they're all happy with this item and progress on the Gnoll Country Park. I think it's very important today that this item is moving that particular place forward. It's probably a long time overdue, but the master plan, as Gareth Nutt is no longer with us, would have started this plan, and through the consultation and scrutiny arrived at where we are today. However, I just wanted to reiterate, which I normally do anyway, scrutiny is important. I'm hoping that through Karen Jones and others, that we at some point can get back to our meetings so that we have these items there that maybe or possibly a more in-depth scrutiny process can take place through the members of such a committee. And as far as the consultation, I do notice that it's a lot of it is very old consultation, going back when I remember a meeting with myself at that location. The Friends of the Gnoll also there in a meeting with officers. So I welcome the consultation. However, sometimes you need to have a wider cast net, a little bit wider, to have other views and opinions from those who would like to see what we have. And on that, I spoke to a number of the committees of the Friends of the Gnoll Park, and they don't seem to either remember or recognise some of the comments that are made on their behalf in this report. But the one question then, Chair, thank you for your indulgence. The one question is that we all know that parking at this location, not currently through coronavirus, but when we get back to normal, is pretty horrendous. The council have worked very hard to mitigate and support and try to alleviate these concerns for residents living in and around the location. This master plan, obviously, when it comes to fruition, will increase that parking. And I just wonder it is in the report. You mentioned the Woodland Trust. Sorry, there's conversations with the Woodland Trust to possibly initiate further parking on site if and when this happens. I just wondered how confident are we that that could take place, because otherwise, to increase parking by any percent at this location will undoubtedly cause major problems for those living in that location. I see a cabinet member shaking his head, but I can assure you there's already major problem before coronavirus came up at that site. Indiscriminate parking, and our officers have to implement in certain circumstances. So if we do increase the parking in that location through this master plan, what are the plans of the council and its partners to mitigate against this parking? So that's my only question, but observation as chair with the scrutiny process. Thank you, Mike, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Brennan or Mr. Roberts, please.
If I could come in, Councillor Harvey. I think in terms of scrutiny, a couple of years ago, when with changes at the time, responsibility for the 3 country parks was moved under Leisure and Culture Subcommittee of the Education and Lifelong Learning and Leisure. And so that is why, for example, when we had the workshop, that Councillor Rees as chair of L and Councillor Reynolds as chair of the subcommittee were invited to those workshops. Now it's apparent that obviously other members of other scrutiny committees, for example, regeneration and sustainable development, obviously have an interest in economic development and biodiversity issues. And similarly, street care have interest when there are issues of parking and access and parking charges. So I think it's a question for us to talk to scrutiny officers about how those sort of cross-cutting areas, how members from the different areas are involved in reports like this, where they can cover a whole range of remits for members. On the question of access, the pedestrian access that's been asked for by the Woodland Trust does require a pedestrian bridge link, so a footway link and a pedestrian bridge to be constructed over the boundary of the park into the new woodland area. And for that link, the Woodland Trust need a licence from us as a council. And that's why in the report, we have asked for delegated authority to look at the terms and conditions that go with that agreement, but in consultation with the cabinet member, and we will certainly as well be engaging with the local members, come to the detail of any terms and conditions for an access agreement. And as you say, yes, we, as recognised in the report, the Gnoll Park is a very popular park. On peak days, it's already, the parking there is full. So we will certainly be having, detailed discussions with the Woodland Trust about how their proposed development could impact on the park. And we will certainly be expecting them to work with us if their facility is a big success, to work with us on ensuring that their success doesn't become a problem in the park. And I'm sure they'd be happy to work on that with us. And as we say, we've already had discussions with them about the potential for extending the parking at the Gnoll if that were necessary. But it's all in the detail of the license agreement. And so that will be in discussion with the cabinet member. And also we will be discussing it with the local members.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question, I guess, Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I welcome the report, and notwithstanding what Steve was saying a bit earlier about perhaps because of the length of time this has taken, this team have been working in very unusual circumstances. Some people couldn't recall being part of the consultation. I was quite struck from the report that there seemed to have been a high level of engagement in the particularly from people living locally, which perhaps is an indication of the value that's placed on Gnoll Park within the local community as well as wider afield across the county borough. And I think the exercise also shows the value of reinstating the tourism team to help guide strategic business projects such as this, not just the marketing elements, even though that's important, but the actual strategic elements as well. So one of my questions is going to be: do officers see this model of consultation and developing a plan as being one perhaps that we could use in the future in different settings? And the second question I wanted to raise is referred in the report to rebranding the cafe with the use of Welsh and local produce. I certainly welcome that, and I know Nigel Hunt isn't able to be in the meeting today, but it's a point that he has raised as the Civic Centre in Talbot and the Princess Royal Theatre in Nigel's ward, and he's raised before, the question about perhaps being able to use local produce, in the bar areas and the catering there. There are things like, local breweries and so on, which have been very successfully developing, and it's been good if we can, improve the number of outlets that they have available. It also ties into the food and drink festival that we sponsor. So I'm just wondering whether, if it's successfully introduced at the cafe at the Gnoll, if we would look at extending that approach to promoting local and Welsh national produce in outlets that either we run as a council or that are run on our behalf by concessions. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Brennan, please.
Do you want me to take that, Mike?
Okay.
I think it's something that we've looked at for a long time, Councillor Llewellyn, in terms of promoting the companies. Obviously, we do a lot of work with the companies themselves to get them to expand, but also in terms of the events that we put on. And the only slight drawback we get sometimes is around the procurement end of the world. That is changing slowly, and it's something that we've been speaking to Craig about. And I mean, we have had sort of slightly strange situations in the past where, for instance, we couldn't buy any bread locally. We had to buy it through a company in Newport because that's what came on the NPS and the National Procurement Service. But we are trying to move away from that. And in fairness, the NPS have realised that some of the things they were doing were not the smartest and have given up in certain areas. So I think that hopefully is changing.
Okay.
If I could just add, Chair, I think the company that we used had done a previous exercise for the council, so we're learning from these consultations and processes all the time. I set out in the report, I think it's 818 responses that we had, so we did get extensive reach on the consultation that we did, but there's potentially always room to develop and improve with all the changing technology and everything. So we certainly keep everything under review. And in terms of the cafe at the Gnoll, that's definitely something that the service manager will be looking at in terms of Welsh produce and whether that, bringing some more local identity to the offer there. But as Simon has pointed out, we do have to keep within the procurement rules.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
I've not got anything to ask, Mike. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Suzanne Paddison, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I wholeheartedly support this report. It's wonderful to see something like this happening in our parks. If anything, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's the value of our outside spaces, and I think this is amazing. However, there's only one small question I have. As part of my duties under social services, I know that we annually run events in Gnoll Park for our looked after children, and I just wondered, would there be sufficient space left, or would that event have to be relocated? Thank you.
Mr. Brennan.
Mike, I think we'll be picking that one up.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's been fun runs and things in the park which have all been accommodated. I think when we have this license agreement, there is going to have to be something in there that does have the opportunity to review over time, because obviously there's a significant investment by the Woodland Trust in paying for the bridge, and they will want access over a period of time. So we'll definitely need a review clauses in that agreement, so that if there is pressure on parking and that does start impacting on events that we have, then we can review the arrangements with the Woodland Trust. And certainly we would be looking at, for example, they can't have events when we have events, if that's going to mean that the parking will be totally insufficient. So I don't know the exact numbers that come to the events that you're talking about, but I do know that we've accommodated everything that's happened so far, except in that they are full on peak summer days at the Gnoll as it is, and we recognise that in the report.
If I may, Chair, just quickly, it was more to do with the fact that the location of where they used to hold the open days seems to be where some of these pods would be now, and I just wondered if we could accommodate both an open day and the pods, or whether the open day would have to be relocated. I mean, if it does, it does, but I just wondered if there was sufficient land left.
Well, there's a lot more discussion to be done. We're some way off delivering those. With the pods,
that's fine.
There's an expression of interest process to be done. We've also got to have a search of all the funding opportunities, and that will determine the viability and potential for an accommodation proposal being taken forward. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge yet before we get to the fine detail.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Jarrett, you got your hand up?
Yes, Chair, just to try and be helpful, just to say that I'm happy to engage in discussions with Mike around making sure that event can go ahead, either at the Gnoll or elsewhere. So I'm happy to take that forward.
Okay, thanks.
That's marvellous.
Okay, we got three other indications pre-scrutiny: Councillor Purcell and Councillor Ridian Maes. Councillor Purcell, please.
Thank you. I've got three questions. Would you like me to ask them all at once or separately and then get separate answers?
Ask them all at once. Then.
Right. Okay, the first one is to do with biodiversity, which is given very high priority by the visitors on page 16. But it says that the master plan does not include detailed actions as to how this is going to be promoted, I think is the best word to use. It says, but officers' working group will ensure that it's taken forward. And going back to what Councillor Hunt said at the beginning, I just wondered how that progress on promoting biodiversity was going to be scrutinised. And that question links with another question that I was going to ask. I rather flippantly asked in the consultation whether the Swans had been consulted about the possibility of putting boats on the lake. But there is a point behind that question in that I think we have to bear in mind, is this a country park or a park that's in the country? And if we're promoting the biodiversity and the environmental attractions, we need to be careful with the lake that we don't do anything to militate against the diverse number of geese and swans that visit on a regular basis. So I wanted to highlight those two and see what the officers had to say about that. The second question is, again, on page 4, we talk about trying to raise additional revenue, which obviously we've got to do. We all know what sort of a financial crisis we're going to be in once we ever emerge from this. But we also need to strike a balance between attracting people from outside and appealing to the locals. So I just wanted assurances from officers and from the cabinet members that at no point will the car parking be increased to such an extent that it prices out the locals, because this is a local park, an absolutely essential green lung that is so widely used. And I just wanted to flag that up. On another aspect of the car parking, however, I very much welcome the idea of ANPR and paying on exit, because that should really reduce the number of queues. And it means that we will capitalise on every penny that we should be capitalising on, and hopefully therefore able to keep the prices down. The final question was a very simple one, and simply because I'm not on regeneration or anything like that, and I just wondered if officers could explain how the private sector aspect of this works. On page 11, are we talking about selling off the Ranger's cottage, or are we talking about leasing it? I just wanted a little bit of simple clarification, particularly for ordinary members of the public, as to how that would work. Sorry, there were so many questions, but I should have said at the beginning, I think this is all a brilliant idea, but we need to make sure that it works. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brennan or Mr. Roberts, please.
If I come in first, Simon, I think the report is largely a product of the master planning exercise that Gareth initiated, and on the biodiversity side, in terms of the actions, that's something we do need to flesh out a bit further as part of the working group activity. In terms of scrutiny, I think is the point that I made at the beginning, that there are various scrutiny committees with an interest in the activities at the park, whether it's to do with parking, the biodiversity, or as a tourism function, and it's how we work with scrutiny officers to make sure that all members from those scrutiny committees who want to have an input are able to have an input in scrutinising the proposals at the country park. In terms of which one was third? The price and of the parking. Well, nobody. I think it's fair to say absolutely nobody likes paying for parking. The analysis does show that the parking there is good value for what is on offer, I think, and the parking is not out of line with anything in the town centre. And we know from all the feedback that people would like us to keep the parking charges at the Gnoll as low as they can be. But we do have to recognise that it does provide income, which plays an important part in the maintaining the sustainability of all the facilities which are there, the grounds and the facilities. As you say, it's a country park that everyone enjoys. So we do need a level of income, and parking charges contribute to that. In terms of the private sector involvement in the Rangers, the old Rangers cottage, yes, we're not talking about selling it or anything. I mean, using a letting agent, for example, is a standard process, but that can have a range too, from simply using a letting agent to market the property for us, to carrying out full management of bookings at the facility. And that's something that's been going on up at Margam Park, and we'll certainly be talking and learning from colleagues and what they're doing up there. And I know that Wayne Curtis, who works with me, I think he's going up to Margam Park next week for a meeting there, so that they can exchange ideas and experience. Simon, do you want to add anything?
I suppose just to add, I mean, the parking side of it is something that we probably need to refine as an organisation generally. We've got 3 parks. They all have different sort of slightly different parking regimes, etc. sometimes. And I think on that, there's probably something in there around the season ticket element of it that makes it very reasonable for locals to have season tickets, but perhaps it's more expensive for visitors coming into the area. So they would pay a reasonable rate for their daily parking that we could use against some of the subsidising the locals parking. Then I think it's something we just need to look at and refine in some way.
Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
The Councillor Al-Nokia has put in the chat there that the pods are proposed to be sited on land not currently used by the public at the side and behind the house. The land used by social services should not be affected by this. So that's good news. And Mr. Griffiths, I saw you put your hand up.
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. Just a point on the car parking. ANPR parking isn't permitted in Wales in council-run car parks. So we would probably need a legislative change, so that we just need to be mindful of that when we look at the parking strategy. We'll just need to review that as we move forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Lockyer, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wouldn't normally be speaking as cabinet member here, and I'm not. I'm speaking as the local member. So I am really well aware of the parking issues, along with David and Simon and Mike. We've been challenging with these issues for many years, and to be fair, I've talked with the residents of Fairyland in particular about the problems, and they did have problems, but we've come up with a parking restriction which now stops people from just inadvertently parking out through that estate. So they're all fairly well protected now. As for the other parts of around the park, well, unfortunately, that's one of the pleasures, or not so much of the pleasures, of living close to a facility as lovely as this. I mean, I live close to the rugby ground. I don't complain when there's a rugby match on, because I know the rugby ground was there before I moved into the house. I mean, we do like to complain as residents. I know we want it to be used, but we don't like people parking outside our houses. But it is, as Simon pointed out earlier, it is on peak days that we really experience high volumes there. So I think if they're managed, as Simon and Mike have pointed out, there shouldn't be a problem. And if there are, we'll have to, as they've said, face those and adjust accordingly. But we have done extensive work to make sure the local residents are not being put out too much by people parking, certainly by restrictive parking now, which is up certainly in the Fairyland site. So, as I say, as the local member, I'm more than well aware, as are Mike, David and Simon, because we talk on a fairly regular basis. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. I see Councillor Annette Wingrave's got a hand up, as long as it's brief, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a cabinet member and also the biodiversity champion for Neath Talbot, I can assure you, Councillor Purcell, that biodiversity is high on our agenda. I mean, it is covered by current law. The Habitats Directive of 1992 ensures that we can't do anything to affect the wildlife and the biodiversity within the park. So everything will be maintained. And officers don't like the biodiversity team because they're very good at their job. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Councillor Rydian Maisen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's on the issue of the pods, these high quality pods. Yeah, it's a great report and it's a great idea. I know quite a number of my friends go on these breaks to either the yurts or these high class lodges, and they're very popular, especially if you got like a hot tub or a barbecue outside as well. I know a number of them have gone to them. It's just a question of, are we looking at a private company to run this, the third private sector then to run it? And if we can't get anybody interested, are we looking at to run it ourselves? Because you're going to need maintenance issues and meal laundry, things like admin. I'm just wondering if you're looking for an outside company to run it.
Okay, Mr. Brennan or Mr. Roberts, please. Mr. Roberts, you muted.
Yes, so we are going to have an expressions of interest process, and that will, along with looking at all the different funding mechanisms and streams, that will identify the appetite for taking forward accommodation at the site and also the viability of it. So that is a decision that will need to be considered and taken after that expressions of interest process. And I'm sure a lot of the decisions, other than the ones that are here today, for example, there's some ones on signage or whatever, other decisions will be coming back to members for decision in due course.
Okay, thanks for that. I had a question sent to me by Councillor Sheila Penry, and it was in respect of the question that Councillor Maisen puts. There's no need for me to ask it. Any further questions? Councillor Wingrave, is that an old hand, please?
Sorry, Chair, take it down.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further indications. So therefore we go to the recommendations to go to Cabinet. They're on pages 13 and 14 in the papers. Are we happy for those to go as they are to Cabinet? Or is anybody not happy with them, please? No. Okay, could I have a proposer for the recommendations, please?
I propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks. Anybody against the recommendation? No. Anybody abstaining? No. Okay, they go as they are there for Cabinet to consider. Next item in pre-scrutiny we decided to scrutinise was item 4, Neath Business Improvement District Ballot, pages 201 to 214. Unless officers have got anything to add to the report, then we'll go straight to questions. In pre-scrutiny, we had a number of indications for questions. First one is Councillor Stephen Hunt, please.
Thank you again, Chair. Appreciate that. I have no issues with the purpose of the report. It's quite self-explanatory. But I do have a question after I address a few points within the report. I'm not sure if it's for Craig Griffiths or another committee member, officer. The business consultation within the report, I'll be specific. It says it was carried out with over 50% of levy payers. It doesn't actually give a figure, whether it's 55, 56 or whatever, but I think 50% is low consultation, given the importance of this item for businesses within the Neath Town Centre. But then if I drill down on it a bit more, 87 of the 125 who were consulted returned, which was 69.6 returned their questionnaires. The results of showed that 72% were in favour of the bid, 10% were not, 13 had not yet decided, and a further 5. Well, if you look at the figures from who took part, this is certainly down in the regions of 30-35%, if that. My question and concerns are that this is going to be a 5-year levy again under the bid. I have no issues with the excellent work that it produces. However, in these difficult times, further down in the report, it mentions that the bids themselves made a decision in March not to collect a bid levy, as they recognise the importance of supporting businesses through these difficult times. Well, the difficult times, unfortunately, have not gone away. They're still very much with us. And therefore, my question is, whoever gets involved in this consultation, I would urge officers and this council to try and maximise those businesses to take part, because that's very important, of course, so they have their say. But if it's successful, do all businesses have to pay that levy for the 5 years? Will they be, if they're the ones who said no, if they're the ones who didn't take part, if they're the ones who don't return any results, will they all be forced to pay this extra levy? And why I bring this up is we all recognise the bids are good and they have produced a lot of good work for Neath. Given that we've got business paying business rates, paying rents, paying other, obviously they've probably got their own homes, council tax and so forth. They are struggling. The report recognises that. How on earth are they going to afford it? Surely, this is why I mentioned Craig, surely if those who want to opt out, they should not be forced to pay the levy like those who want to opt in. It should be based on the ones who opt in, pay the levy. I know that's a difficult model because it was mentioned in pre-briefing that they would also have the benefits from the bid. and therefore if they're not paying, they shouldn't. So I understand the complications, but it's more of a legal question. If somebody doesn't want to take part and pay a levy, why or are they going to be forced to pay it? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Mr. Brennan, please.
Thank you, Chair. They will have to pay if they're over the threshold, which I think is about a £6,000 a year rateable value, and they're within the zone, then they will have to pay the bid levy. That was the agreement. That's the way the bid levies are set up, for the reasons that you pointed out earlier, really, where if they didn't have to, probably the vast majority of them would say no. They'd want the benefits of it, and you'd never get a bid. I suspect you wouldn't get one in operation because people won't vote to pay for it if they think they don't have to, other than perhaps some of the larger organisations who might feel that they can. But generally speaking, I think that would be a difficult thing to set up.
Chair, can I briefly come back? I know you've got a lot of questions, but I will be brief. And thank you for that, Simon. And that's what I thought it would be. I just wondered the influence within the council that we have under this process, because I know businesses were closed, and this was before coronavirus. We all know it's more difficult now. This could force businesses to shut rather than pay the levy, and that's the whole point. Isn't there a way of dealing with this to support the businesses through this this consultation? And the last thing, Chair, I promise you, is what are you doing, as I mentioned in the beginning of what I spoke about, what are you doing to try and get the majority of the businesses to take part? Because they clearly not, and I know why some aren't, because they don't want to get involved, but it's in their interest too. But what are we doing to make sure they do get involved, working with the what's the name of them, the Neath inspired, to make sure people get involved as businesses? Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. I really do.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brennan, do you want to come back, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, they were the consultation was done by the bid themselves, by Neath Inspired, and ultimately it'll go to vote. So if the small businesses, if enough of them don't want it and all vote against it, then obviously the bid wouldn't proceed. But if the vast majority of them do want it, then they've obviously had 5 years. It isn't an unknown quantity now. They've had 5 years of working alongside Neath Inspired and understand what they can do and the benefits that they can bring. So I mean, it is a tricky situation. I understand Councillor Hunt's point. A lot of the businesses are certainly struggling financially at the moment. On the other hand, you could argue that actually the bid is needed more than ever, because if we're going to revive our town centres, then the work that the Neath Inspired and the work that that they do in Port Talbot as well, in the bid in Port Talbot, are vital to making sure our town centres can prosper. So it is a little bit of a difficult situation. I do absolutely appreciate that. When finances are tight, people don't want to pay any bills that they don't have to. But I think it has proven in the past, and in the work that they've done, and the some of the discussions they've had with the different businesses throughout Neath, one of the things that came out was they would like more events, because they see those as a major area where the incomes rise during that period. And you know, Neath Inspired have put on a number of events in association with the town council, alongside the work that the council has done as well. So it's about everyone working together to make sure that our town centres can hopefully thrive after COVID, and people will get enough confidence to come back in, enough reasons to come back into town centres.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question is from Councillor Saif Rahman, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have no issues with the report or the recommendation. However, I would like to ask a question. The report details some of the achievements and work that BID has enabled in Neath Town Centre, which Simon just mentioned. However, has there ever been any local study or measurable data gathered over the past 5 years that recognizes the real economical benefit, such as driving growth and investment this improvement district has had locally in Neath town. That's my question, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Brennan, please.
It's thank you, Chair. I think it's quite a difficult thing to measure because sometimes you're working hard to either stand still because of the difficult economic climate and the amount of online shopping, etc., that's being done these days, but also with the other attractions that people used to traditionally go into a town centre on a weekday if they weren't working, or a weekend, whereas that sort of tradition has died out somewhat. So it is about sort of working hard to stand still in some respects. We are having some discussions at the moment with companies that can provide specific kind of data for the town centres, which of course we could share with businesses and with the bids themselves. But there are some drawbacks with some of those because to some extent they will generate their information from small numbers of people, and then they extrapolate that information out. One of them we've been speaking to, it looks like they generate their information from apps, for example, but maybe not the apps that are very popular with people. So it's sometimes the information that's available out there is not quite as good as it might seem on the face of it, because they do, as I say, extrapolate that data out and make assumptions. But we are looking at that, and we are doing some work with Welsh Government at the moment with the Laura One project, which would allow us to have some counters within town centres and to generate that data through those systems. So it is work in progress. But there isn't any real data on that. But when we've done events such as I think when the food festival, we've had actual counters in the town centres themselves, and we know then that football is up significantly. So that's why they understand that these weekends or these weekday events such as the food festival and others have made life better for the traders within the town centres because their take-ins are better as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Then next question, I got three more indications from Councillor Alan Llewellyn, Councillor Sandra Miller, and I think Councillor Dennis Keogh. So Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I hope that the proposal will be supported to continue. I mean, I think that especially with the need to rebuild the economy of Neath post-COVID, this is potentially a very, very valuable vehicle for helping to regenerate the centre once again in difficult times. But I take the point that Councillor Steve Hunt was making earlier about the level of engagement with the previous surveys. There was the question that is submitted in advance really is, either bid as the current Neath Inspired as a current organisation, or ourselves as the Ballot organisers. How do we propose to try and engage the businesses in participating? I would, those that haven't responded to the surveys previously or have expressed doubts, I would expect that they're looking for indications of value for money and tangible results, which, as Simon said, are not always easy to demonstrate. But these are questions I'm sure that will be asked during the reballoting process. And I wonder if, so I think perhaps further thought needs to be given to that, primarily by Neath Inspired themselves as an organisation. But I wonder if Simon would comment whether there are any implications if the ballot is unsuccessful. If there are, what sorts of things wouldn't happen if the ballot is unsuccessful, or how the relationship between the town and the local authority would change, other initiatives and projects that we would find more difficult to introduce and implement if we didn't have that sort of partnership in place.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's quite a number of things really. I mean, the Neath Inspired, it does, as the one in Port Talbot, it does provide a focal point for traders to get a consensus view about the things that they think are good and beneficial for the town centre. I mean, they've done some in the work that they've done recently. you can understand the points that they've raised, and they're probably, you know, they're points that we would be aware of. They've raised issues around parking, obviously, antisocial behaviour within town centres. But on the positive side, then, as I said, things like more events. They would like more events. So they understand some of the problems within the town centre. They also contribute to things like the floral decorations throughout the town, etc., etc. So there would be a number of things that would not happen, and probably a number of events that wouldn't happen. But I think as well, it perhaps wouldn't be quite as cohesive for the traders as a group of people to make sure that all their views were put forward and put forward for the wider majority, not for individual traders who shout loudest, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks very much.
Okay, two further indications. Councillor Sandra Miller, please. Before we go there, Councillor Lockyer has put in the chat there, the bid has put a counter of people traffic. This has shown large increases in footfall during events held and assisted by the bid. So that's some useful information there. And Councillor Sandra Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. My issue is around the consultation. It is a very low turnout to be making decisions on that, and ideally I'd like to see, in light of the elements of COVID, I'd like to see that rerun again to see if we could get a more representative view of traders. Now the question is, no, without a doubt, Neath is one of the better towns in sustaining its shop base. You know, you only have to look in other areas such as Carmarthen, you know, just to see how their trade has now reduced down significantly, and Neath has now sustained it. But no, let's be honest, Neath has always had a better support of business in the past. So, you know, it is a case of we have to try to engage with these traders to show the worth of it. And on that element of the levy payers, I think that that's a very, very poor basis in which to try to run this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Brennan, any comment, please?
I think probably, Chair, just to go back to my earlier point, that that was a consultation only, really, and the proof obviously is in the pudding when the ballot takes place. And if those, I mean, at that point, I would be surprised if the businesses, even those who are a bit ambivalent towards the bid, don't make their voice known one way or the other if they're going to be financially affected. So ultimately, we'll know at that point whether they still really value the bid enough to contribute financially towards it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they value it. Okay, and the last indication we had at pre-scrutiny for a question was from Councillor Dennis Keogh. Councillor Keogh, please.
Thank you, Chair. The point I brought up has been answered by Mr. Brennan earlier on. Thank you.
Okay, I can see another hand just flew up there with me. Councillor Hunt, you've come back before. Just a quick one then, please.
Yes, Chair. My question wasn't answered. That's why I've come back. What I'm asking is with Craig Griffiths, is it a legal requirement that somebody who doesn't want to take part or somebody who doesn't want to pay a levy, is it a legal requirement that they have to? That was was in the questions in the beginning. I just wanted to know through a legal sense that that a business who chooses not to, how are they forced to pay it? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Griffiths, is this one for you or for Mr. Brennan, please?
I think Howell has his hand up.
Can I come in, Howell Jenkins?
Yes, certainly.
Yes, in terms of the regulations, they are clear to say that if there is a successful ballot agreeing to establish a bid, or in this case renewing the bid, then every business within the footprint of the levy area is required to pay the bid levy. They've got the opportunity, as Simon Brennan mentioned, to actually vote in favour or against it when the ballot is run. But that will be the outcome of that will be in place for the 5 years, and they will have to pay the business rates for the whole of the 5 years. And the regulations require us to actually take court action against people who refuse to pay as well. So it's the same process as if they are paying business rates that applies to all of this process. But of course, in terms of value, as the report indicates, it's about 80, I think, thousand that is mentioned to be collected across all the businesses within the bid area. So it's a much lower charge on the premises. It's 1.5% of the business rateable value for each property. So hopefully that clears that point, Chair and Councillor Hunt.
You've given this one a fair going over, if you like. Chloe, did you have something coming in?
It was just that Craig has lost his connection, Chair. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, I did
yeah.
see that one in the notes.
He's back here now, Chair. Craig is back here now.
Okay. Thanks for that, but I think Mr. Jenkins answered the question anyway. I'm just looking like somebody else put their hand up in chat. Okay, Councillor Purcell, last question, please.
Thank you. I just want clarification on this. I can see, representing a small town myself, I can understand what is going on here from the trader's point of view. I just wanted clarification. If we look at the recommendation, which I've lost, oh yeah, found it. Page 2. Oh gosh, I don't know, I can't read it. Anyway, it is recommended that the reballot for Neath bid is supported by the council. So are we supporting the results of a ballot that has just taken place, or are we supporting going out to reballot? It's not absolutely clear in the wording of the recommendation. So I'll just repeat that question, because if I'm not clear, then somebody else might not be clear. Are we saying we've had a reballot, this is the result, and we're supporting it as a council, or are we supporting going out to reballot? Thank you.
The way I read it is that it's recommended that reballot for Neath bid is supported by the council, so for us to support the reballot. Mr. Brennan, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct, Chair. Obviously the original ballot was 5 years ago. This is the reballot. The recent results was about a consultation exercise rather than a ballot. So the ballot is for them to vote as to whether they want to have the bid in place for the next 5 years or not.
Yeah.
In that case, Chair, I share Councillor Miller's reservations about the level of response to that consultation. And the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, I really do share Councillor Hunt's and Councillor Miller's reservations about this.
Okay, thanks for that. I see another hand up. Councillor Susan Paddison, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, somebody said it earlier on, and I can't remember who said it, but business people are very busy. They may not have involved themselves with the consultation. The real one is, the ballot, because they know it's important. So they may not have replied to the consultation. That doesn't mean that they don't wish to go forward with it, or I think the reballot would give them the option. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And again, if you weren't happy with the bid, then you would have replied. I know I would have if I wasn't happy to the consultation. Okay, I see no other indications. And if you could put your hand down after you've asked the question, please. Then the recommendation in respect of this is on page 204. Are we happy to support that recommendation to go to Cabinet as it is? Or is anybody... Sorry?
Sorry, I thought you were asking for somebody to move it.
No, yeah, I'm just
not
asking, are we happy for that to go as it is to Cabinet, or is anybody unhappy, please? Or doesn't want it to go? I don't see any hands. Okay, can I have a proposer, please?
I will move, Chair.
Seconder?
I second that.
Thank you. Anybody against? Don't see any hands. Anybody abstaining? No, I don't see any hands. So that recommendation goes to Cabinet as it is. So that's item 4. Item 5, traffic order, we're not scrutinising. 6, we're not scrutinising. Next item we are scrutinising as a scrutiny committee is item 7, information technology equipment for schools. In respect of this, in the pre-scrutiny, one councillor Del Morgan, indicated he's got a question on this. Councillor Morgan, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd, thank you. I'm very much in support of this, Chair. I note, the hard work that has been going on during this terrible pandemic to help our young people to progress their education as best possible, and this equipment has been invaluable. My question is going to be, if we look at the beginning of the report, is the page 235, it mentions the central government specific grant to support the acquisition of equipment and systems. So I'm going to ask a question really about what about the software and the systems to support this equipment? The report mentions quite rightly the blended learning that has to be developed or even accelerated now really. Blended learning is something that's been happening across the world in education, gradually over the last couple of decades, and it's been accelerating really significantly because of COVID-19. The new curriculum in Wales also will need more and more blended learning techniques. So if I put it this way, hardware on its own, of course, is no good. We need software and systems to run on it. We need licenses for those software packages. So we need training and learning packages, educational packages, and we need training for staff and operatives and for the young people themselves. So I just wanted to ask, Chair, whilst being hugely in support of this, seriously, are we also confident then that this hardware investment will be matched, by the much needed sort of usage elements? So for example, the software packages and the licensing and the training I mentioned. So have we got the elements in place ready to use and utilize the hardware when it is delivered? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Evans, you answering this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The simple answer is yes. I think also that software perhaps is even dated these days, Councillor Morgan. Lots of our schools are using different platforms. They will be able to access resources on the hub facility, which is promoted by Welsh Government. We also facilitate a range of training opportunities through our school improvement service. And also I know that schools individually are also able to support that training. It's been quite evident that the development of blended learning and distance learning has accelerated at pace. If we take you back to March of this year, blended learning and distance learning were phrases that probably existed, but very little understanding of the value of those elements. And I think what we have seen is not only schools using technology effectively, but using them as a learning tool, because at the heart of what's happening as far as distance learning and blended learning is concerned is good quality learning, good engagement. So the simple answer is yes. And I suppose the more convoluted answer is also yes.
Okay, thanks for that. And Mr. Andrew Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add
Thank you, Chair. Just to add a little bit to that, I think the word systems in the report, Councillor Morgan, there is referring really to the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi, the switch points. Neath Talbot many years ago has foresight in terms of investing in the infrastructure in schools. Having said that, like everything to do with IT, you know, they wear out. So in the early days, the first year of the grant, we replaced some of the switches in the schools, which means we don't have schools with dead spots in terms of the Wi-Fi. So the hardware can access at all times. So that, you know, the devices are usable, and then obviously the platforms that Alan just spoken about in terms of the hub is the predominant one which schools use. Not the only one, but it's certainly the predominant one. But I think the term systems in that respect refers to infrastructure, you know, as I've just said.
If I may, Chair, I'm encouraged with the responses. Thank you very much. I've witnessed it myself in the school down the road, and you know, the sooner we get these deliveries, the better.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Peter Rees put in the chat there how schools are able to ensure this blended learning is successful, as they have proved. Okay, in respect of this item, any further questions, please? I don't see any. The recommendation in respect to this is on page 239. Are we happy as a scrutiny committee for that to go to cabinet as it is?
I move.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Can I second it, please?
I second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. Anybody against this proposal? No. Anybody abstaining? Okay, that goes to cabinet as it is. In respect of the decision is an urgent one for immediate implementation, subject to the consent of the relevant scrutiny chair, and is therefore subject therefore not subject to the calling procedure. So that's that. Okay. Next item. Admission to community schools. We decided not to scrutinise that. Urgent items, there was one, the Christmas and New Year opening times. We decided not to scrutinise that. Item 10, access to meetings, is to resolve to exclude the public for the following items of business pursuant to Regulation 4 in brackets 3 and in brackets 5 of Statutory Instrument 2001 number 2290, and the undermentioned exempt paragraph 14 of Part 4 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. So can I have a proposer to go to private?
I move, Chair.
Thank you.
Second, Chair.
Seconder. Okay. All in agreement? Anybody not in agreement? Okay, so therefore we go into private.